welcome to episode 9 of the Tales of Crisis. With me, your host, Martin Swaffield, and I'm joined once more by our regular co-host, James Chalmers. How are you, Chalmers?
I'm not too bad, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Lots more MCP being played and bought and painted, so the world is in a good place. So in this episode, we're going to be mainly covering two areas. One, we had another monthly event down at the Bearded Card Trader, which I attended and took my Criminal Syndicate once more. So we'll cover that event. And we've also had a number of changes, updates to existing cards that we're going to cover off. And we're going to be focusing on the latest set, which have been Guardians, which we have a semi-regular Guardians player on, who's going to give us lots of insights into all the changes, aren't you?
Oh, who are we getting on? I've played them quite a bit, so it's been nice. It was nice to see them. I mean, I think they're the one affiliation that a lot of people were excited to see what happened to. I think they were like one of the first or second affiliations at our post-core box that came out. So yeah, no, it's nice to actually see them updated and kind of brought in line with, I was going to say regular, but more common and recent releases. So some very good changes.
Yeah, and I've been reading the articles as well that they've been putting out, and it's been interesting to see their logic and basically what they're saying was they tried to do something a little bit different with Guardians, and maybe not all of those paid off exactly how they wanted them, but overall, I think the changes they're making, so they've done the core set now, and that's been published. They've done Hulk, we've seen Green Goblin. None of them have been, outside of maybe Hulk, none of them have been large changes. They've been subtle, they've been a number here or there, a little tweak, but it makes such a difference. And I think they're really trimming that bell curve, as they say, to bring things not flatline, as you say. You might as well go and play chess if you want flatline. You need a bit of variety. Not everybody's going to be perfectly balanced, but we are getting to a point where there aren't those, well, that's a standout character and this one's never look at them again.
Yeah, I think that's the joys of MCP, is that like you can kind of take what you want and still have a good time and not feel like you're just being smashed into the ground. Yeah,
and I think if you were to say to most players prior to this, which is one affiliation you wouldn't take, it's Guardians, because they were it was that little bit more of an uphill struggle. These changes, I think, maybe even put them ahead of the curve slightly. Time will tell, but they definitely feel like they've been given a massive boost, which is great. You know, I love the movies. It's one of the first affiliations I was interested in getting into when I joined into the game, but as many, I was put off by people saying, oh no, they don't work, this, that and the other. So they were probably going to be my second affiliation behind Asgard. By the time I'd been done with Asgard, Criminal Syndicate came out, so I kind of missed them by. But along with a number of people, I'll definitely be going back and painting up the ones I've got to give them a run out.
Excellent.
So if we delve into that in the first instance, what is your overall take been of the changes? Not just to Guardians, but the way they're approaching it, and then we'll go into the actual Guardian changes.
The way they're approaching it, it's below what you said. It's kind of they're not making anything too crazy. Like they could easily go, right, okay, well, we know this doesn't work, or this model's never really taken, so let's just turn it up to 11, and then everyone's going to fit it into the roster. It's not like that. Like you said, it's one or two changes, or an additional superpower, or even the change of like some of the superpower power cost, like just dropping it by one just makes it a bit more, oh yeah, I can do that. Or I really like it. It's a great way of playing it. Like I said, just saying, it's the joys of MCP is you can kind of take what you want and still feel like you've got a chance. And now that they're making the adjustments for everything, well, not for everything, but for a lot of the early stuff, it's just actually making it even more open for everyone to play. in kind of just being able to go, right, well, I want to take that and not feel like you are struggling. I think it was last episode when I decided not to take Guardians to the event just because it didn't feel like a chore. I think that's a bad word, but it was you had to be on your A game almost like every single game, every turn. And like the wrong activation at the wrong time with Guardians always felt like you kind of then had shot yourself in the foot. But I think now it's going to be a bit more of an even playing field.
Yeah, they were definitely a less forgiving affiliation, and it's that thing of if you're starting the game on the back foot, unless you're going out specifically to prove a point, often that isn't where you want to be. I really rate the way in which AMG are approaching not just this, but their entire way of evolving this game. I've been super impressed. Coming from other systems with other companies, I've been so impressed by how open they've been with their articles explaining why certain things have happened and where they're going with it. And yeah, overall, I think their updates have been fantastic. I was a little surprised, not with who did, but with who didn't get updates from the core box. There were a few that I expected to get something, but didn't, and that's fine. I think since then, the ones that have got them, absolutely, you kind of look at it and go, yep, no, that needs something. They weren't getting anything. And I liked, as I said, when they were explaining what they were trying to do with Groot and Rocket and how they're trying to thematically say, it's almost a 5-threat character with 2 models. They go together. That's the beauty of them. They wanted them to work to a point where individually they were okay, but together they worked really well because essentially thematically they're always together. So yeah, I think their logic, whether it always comes out in the wash or not, who knows? But their logic definitely, they're trying to do the right thing, and that's all you can ask really. So the changes themselves for Guardians, 4 cards or 4 characters got updates. So Star-Lord, Gamora, Groot, and Rocket were all given changes, which means the others were stayed as they are. So what's that? That's Drax, Angela, Nebula, and Ronan all stayed as is. And if we start with Star-Lord, so he was given hit and run, which fine, yeah. I think that's a good one. Allows him to, they described him as somebody who would stay back and was more of a buff piece, and that kind of fits with it. You can get hit and run, you can go in, get into range, and then if the big bad's coming your way, or even if you are in range, you pop off 2 shots as such, and then you get out of there. The leadership was given a change, and we'll cover that in a moment. I did still feel like Star-Lord, but it didn't have many ways to spend power. I know he's only 3-threat, but he still didn't look like he had that many ways to spend power because he only had the 1 superpower and his 1 spender. So I did wonder whether that was going to be something, especially considering you could take it's the power gem that you take with him, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I never struggled with power, spending power with him because, like I said, if you give him the power gen, that essentially you can just do full auto, like 2 times a turn.
Yep.
I mean, with hit and run now, you can kind of, because that's 2 power to do that, and it's not you have to make an element gun, you can actually do it's just make an attack action. So if you do have lots of power, you can do that, kind of spend 2 to do hit and run, spend 3 to do full auto, move around, and then potentially if you've got even more power, then do another full auto if you want to. So with the changes now going in that like you have to have that gem fitted to the character, and I think I said this last time, like it's a bit harder to play him because, like you say, he's a 3-threat leader, which is great, but you've got to decide, well, actually, is he going to be 4-threat like all the time with the power gem? And at that point, it's like, I don't know, at 4-threat, you probably don't always want to play him. And that's the one thing I'm still not the biggest fan of, as such. Like,
no, I get that.
Like, it makes me thinking as a kind of Guardians player, I'm like, I honestly don't know what you want to do because I know it's only like one threat for the gem, but that is a big difference between a 3 and a 4 to then try and fit other characters in as well. But then if you don't have the gem, then he is only getting obviously the 1 power a turn, and then he kind of almost has not the opposite of how to spend power, but it's more how to generate the power. I mean, element gun, yeah, okay, a 5 dice energy attack, which builds power.
Yeah,
It's
it's the
okay.
range 4, so
Yeah,
he doesn't need to get stuck in quite so much. But then we see quite a few now with stealth,
yeah.
so it kind of I
Trying to it is a balance between the two, and I think you will see that with a lot of characters. I expect now going forwards is like trying to decide which which of the options you want. Do you just want to take them stock, or do you just want to take them with the gem built in?
I
I mean,
feel
that's not
like
to say that gems might change.
yeah,
I think they probably would have announced that by now if they were going
I'm
to
not
change some of
expecting
the
them to
gems.
change, but I kind of feel that he'd be better off stock. I don't see enough on him to warrant that extra threat for the gem. Like you say, it was nice to have that flexibility when you're building that roster and you go, well, I could do that, or I could just go for that character that's a threat extra, but then stick the gem on Star-Lord, and that kind of made sense. But as you say, now you've got to say up front, I would guess we're going to see him less. Maybe there's some turn 1 plays that having the extra power opens up for him.
See, the thing is, I think now, especially with the change of winging it, you're going to see him more because winging it is so good now that I think in the past, I mean, I can probably count on. I was going to say on one hand, I could probably count on one finger how many times I used the old winging it because I normally use tactic cards that by turn 2 I've probably spent most of them anyway because I know the kind of plays I want to do with them. But now with the changes to it, so we might as well talk about them now because like
Yeah, so do you think, sorry, are you saying that you think you would see the power gem more often because of the changes to winging it, or less often?
I honestly don't know in
Fair
regards
enough.
to Power Gem. Like
Cool. But
Star Lord
you
in
think you'll see
himself,
Star-Lord and
yeah.
Guardians more often? Yeah,
So in
absolutely.
the past, like when I ran Guardians, probably 50% of the time I never took Star Lord because I'd rather just take some of the other characters because they were
Yep.
better. If I can fit Angela in, then I'd rather take Angela than trying to fit Star Lord, or I really rate Ronan as well. So yeah, I'd rather take them than take a 4th threat Star Lord with a gem or even a 3 threat one. But yeah, I mean with the changes to winging it, so now during the power phase you choose up to 3 allied characters. I like this because it's not like you have to be in range of each other. It's just literally just pick 3 allied characters. Each of them gain a winging it token, and then while the character has a winging it token, when it's attacking, defending, or dodging, it may spend it. And during the modify step, you can re-roll 2 of its dice. And then at the end of the round, you remove all winging it tokens from the character. So that's not even like they can only benefit from it once per game. It's every round, power phase, 3 characters, you get a token, you get a token, you get a token, and re-roll 2 dice. Like,
It's so strong.
it's
It
so
is so
good.
strong. And I think, because I was thinking about it today, I was like, how does that compare to others? And others, generally, you have to pay a power. Well, some of them you have to pay a power to do your rerolls. Some of them you don't have to pay the power, you just get automatic rerolls, but it's much more limited. This, gives you 2 rerolls, but only on 3. So, which I find interesting because generally Guardians want to go wide. So by that we mean they want to have lots of cheap characters, which is what their roster's built on, with a couple of higher threats. Yet you can only pick 3 of them, so that kind of then suggests actually to get better value out of it, you want to go with a low number of super powerful characters. And then you can get, the vast majority, if you just ran Star-Lord with 3 5 threats or something like that, each of those having 2 rerolls would be extremely impressive. So it does give you a bit of a conundrum there, and I like the fact that it is across the round, which means you've got to make that decision. Yes, they're great to have those 2 rerolls, but if that character then gets attacked, do you spend the rerolls on the defense, hoping that, it gives, I think it adds lots to the game and lots of thinking. It's not a default, right, there you go, you've got this power, it's amazing, it's just auto. I think you're going to go into games with people who use this well and come out thinking, well, that's broken. That's super
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah. But then actually, I think there's going to be a knack to knowing when best to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you think, I mean, the fact that it's done in the modifier, you kind of, if it's like a second attack and you need that character to survive and you know it's going to be your next activation with it, and you know what you've rolled for your defense, and you've got 2 blanks, and like, you know what, I'll spend it now to reroll because then it can survive, and then he's like, even if they've got 1 health, at least they can then go out in a blaze of glory. So yeah, I think it's going to be big. I mean, Nebula's not changed, and she's amazing for a 2 threat because she just goes and murders characters and objectives with rerolls for days. So you've kind of got 4 characters a lot of the time in Guardians now with reroll. I mean, Gamora's got
rerolls as well, doesn't she?
No, so she, for every, in the attack dice, for every wild that you roll, you can change a dice to a hit.
That's it. Yeah.
So it's, if anything, it's a kind of better reroll if you roll lots of wilds.
Well, absolutely, but then it also doubles with your reroll, because your reroll will then.
Yeah, because you could choose when to modify it, which.
I'm just thinking, how does that work through with the modification? I would say, because it's all you're modifying your dice all at the same time. So yes, you would reroll and then. I've got
change what you need to. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the thing open here. Let me just check that. Modified dice. Players modify their dice. Attacker applies rerolls and effects that change the attacker's dice roll. Then the defender does. Yeah. So you would be able to reroll your dice and then fish for those wilds, which would then almost count doubles across it. So yeah, I mean, I think, like I say, used at the right time on the right characters, I think it's going to be an extremely powerful affiliation bonus. I think at the same time, I don't think it's ever going to be bad, because rerolls are always good. I think maybe there'll be times where people they get a bit too gung-ho and be like, oh no, I'll reroll that, and where they didn't really need to at that clutch point, and then later on they won't have it when they needed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think changes to Star-Lord, I mean, everybody talked about his leadership being poor. The fact that tactics cards have become so fundamentally core to the game, and often they are more powerful than a reroll. And I think previously it was the Wing 8 tokens went on a single character, didn't they?
Yeah, so you could spend it. What's that? Yeah, you spend a tactics card and then they get 3 tokens that they can use for reroll. So
this way, spreading it definitely makes it better, because it's not often that you probably would end up doing it on every roll then, even if you didn't need to. Whereas at least this way you can spread it out a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's solid. It kind of makes Guardians solid as well. So
good. Anything that means we see more Guardians, especially more Star-Lords, is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've already mentioned her, but Gamora. So her stamina has increased to 6 on both sides.
Yep.
Which is good, because whenever I played against Gamora, and didn't play against Guardians that often, she always seemed really, really good. And I play a very defensive game, so I wasn't necessarily trying to take her out. It was more trying to survive against her. Both her and Nebula seem to just wander around the board at will and just chop me up. But yeah, I think having a 4 threat with only 5 on each side was glass cannon-y. I think it's fair.
My gripe with her, the first ever game I played with her, she was dead turn 2, and I was like, cool. It was just like, oh, is that it? You kind of like you said, it's very glass cannon. You look at it and you're like, yeah, she's gonna go smash face, like long move, and you move up, and then it's just like, yeah, she's dead. Cool.
And now she's got stealth as well, which means that you know, she can stay away from some of the long shooters, and only really have to worry about what she's up against, which she should 9 times out of 10, especially with the rerolls and the changes, take out more or less straight away. So all good from that perspective. And then we've got the dynamic duo that is Groot and Rocket. So we'll start with Rocket. So his personal bodyguard range has increased to 2, and this is basically his interaction with Groot. And I think, again, reading through the article, and I think this didn't come as a surprise because it's something that others had mentioned, the restrictions on having Groot and Rocket so close to each other were the benefits didn't outweigh the negatives as such, because they had to be so close, because they had to be within range 1 for Groot basically to be able to bodyguard. It meant Groot just stood there and did nothing, and if you ignored Rocket, you basically ignored 5 threat. And yes, Rocket did some nice shots every now and then, but or as you say, you walked up and threw Groot into Rocket, which was the other one because they were so close.
Yeah.
So now they don't need to be there, and that second piece is he doesn't suffer damage from collisions, which is great because, as we said, quite often you would just walk up and throw Groot into him. And then I'll cover Groot, and then we'll talk about them as a pair. Groot's strike has increased to range 3 from range 2, so again he's now slightly further away from Rocket, and he's got a further reach, which is great. I Am Groot has decreased by 1 cost, I believe.
Yeah, it used to be 6.
Yep. And now the living plant superpower is now once per turn. So he's lost a little bit there because he used to be able to do it much more often. But I think that balances him out because I think they probably made the first 2 changes and then realised actually he was getting a bit too powerful now that he could be a bit further away from Groot. Rocket, sorry. So overall, does that give you everything you wanted from that duo?
Yes and no.
Start as a duo, because I think I know where you're going. So as a duo, does it give you... Do you
duo,
feel like
yes.
you've put them...
The one thing with personal bodyguard, though, like even though it's still within 2 range, you still got more chance to get pushed away.
Yes.
And that's the thing I always found with, like, it wasn't that Groot had to stand next to Rocket. It was just there's so many pushes and like move, like kind of your opponent makes your model move, and because he's on such a big base, it's just you just move him away, and it's like, well, I'm outside of 1 now. And I think being within 2 still, I think you're still going to get the same issue because, like I said, he is on that big base and he moves small. So 9 times out of 10, once he gets moved once, he's going to probably be out of range. But no, I do like the changes. I think there's still going to be some. The biggest thing I like is nimble. The fact that Rocket can't suffer damage from collisions because, like you said, that was always the thing. If Groot wasn't being moved back, he was just being thrown into Rocket, and Rocket's got 3 health with 2 physical defense, and it's just like, okay, I've just been squashed. This is completely pointless. Like, not pointless, but it was just, it didn't really make sense when you kind of look at the comics and everything of like how they play together. Like, it shouldn't be that Groot can just get thrown into Rocket every single time. It's just like, well, okay. So no, him being kind of immune, it means that Rocket is actually quite survivable. Like, I mean, like I say, he's still got 3 health and 2 defense, but he can't have stuff thrown at him, which is good, and he always counts as being in cover, which is always a bonus for him. So yeah, I like it as a duo, and like their team tactic card is great as well. So overall, I'm a big fan for that.
Yeah, and I did wonder if they were going to say that Groot just couldn't be thrown.
Yeah,
which again thematically kind of makes sense. He just buries his roots into the ground, and
he becomes rooted.
He's a tree, isn't he?
That's the thing I want to talk about in a minute about Groot.
So as a pair, they look like they're much better and they're likely to be taken. And I think they're right. Rocket as a 2, I think, gets into a few affiliations by himself, and I would have said that, you know, outside of Guardians, having the nimble superpower is just a nice bonus, but we did see him in others anyway, so I can see him still cropping up here and there. I think Groot on the other hand, I can't see cropping up, and I think we'll cover that in a second as to why. But I think if you look at them as a 5-threat combo, I think they work quite nicely. Rocket stays at the back, does the damage. If anybody comes to him, then Groot smashes them up. And I think, that works quite nicely. Having said all of that, Groot, we both agree, I think, is just missing something slightly.
Yeah, it's just, you look at his card and it's like, kind of flicking it over, going, where's the rest of it? Like, and I always said that when, like, in the original card as well. Everyone goes, oh, so what does Groot do? And then you show them the card and they're like, is that it?
Yeah. It's a bit like Star-Lord, though, because I know Star-Lord has the leadership, but he's a 3-threat that doesn't have that much. And I think Groot's the same.
Yeah. It's the range 3 for a strike is nice now. That's a nice little bonus. I mean, he's on a big enough base anyway, so yeah, that's good. I'm Groot going down to 5 is really good. It's the thing I always struggled with in the past was you've got, as we've kind of talked about, Groot was always right at the back with Rocket. It's a range 2 strike, and you just don't have that power to do, like, you always had to try and get 6 power to do I am Groot, and it just never worked. I mean, it's a solid attack it's an 8 dice physical attack, so it's nothing to kind of sniff at, but with a throw and a stagger.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were always struggling to actually get the damage, so being range 3 is great. Living Plant, to be fair, like, I always thought it could only be used once per turn anyway. As I was saying, like, it was always, you're struggling for power anyway, so it wasn't really that often you go, oh yeah, I'd do that 2 or 3 times. It just never really worked.
And to be honest, you were like, in the few games I played against him, I ignored Groot because, like you say, he was stood at the back. He only had a range 2 strike. He wasn't really doing anything anyway. So I didn't tend to do much damage to him in the first place, and therefore Living Planet, you just didn't get used.
Yeah.
He wasn't much of a threat, and I knew if he wasn't going to die to chip damage because of Living Planet. Because essentially, let's say you take 3 damage, you get 3 power for it, you spend 2, so you're up by a power. So unless I can do more than 3 damage to him, there was no point in attacking him because I'm just basically going to give him an extra power.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, I always considered taking We Are Groot as tactic card.
Yeah.
So it's 3 power, Groot and all allied characters within 4 of him remove 2 damage.
Yes.
But he just doesn't have the power to do it, and he's always at the back. So even within range 4, you're not really hitting anyone.
No, because you Gamoras and you Nebulas, etc., are off up close,
up the table,
chopping people up, and then it's just Groot and Rocket, and Rocket's only got 3 health, as you said.
Yeah.
So he's rarely needing healing because he's probably just dead.
Exactly. So he's missing something extra, like the fact. I would quite like that he could throw a bit of terrain because he's meant to have all of these branches and vines, and that it kind of makes sense that he would be able to throw something. Or like you said, if he had a rooted, I don't know what you want to call it, a rooted superpower about like this character cannot be moved or
a bit like Vision, where you just put a token next to him at some point, whether it's in the power phase or whenever, he pays 2 and he can't move that turn, but he can't be thrown.
Yeah,
that would be perfect. Turn 1, you move him so that he's within 2 of Rocket, but nothing else, and then you put that on for the rest of the game, and he just stands there, bodyguards Rocket, and chops people up as they come close.
Yeah. I mean, even if he had something that gave him an extra power a turn, like as a living plant, like 2 power a turn, and suddenly it's like actually he's like becomes decent, like he becomes worthwhile. He has that built-in heal that he can spend if he wants to, or he can just he's building up towards that I am Groot a lot quicker. But he unfortunately he just doesn't really do much for me. And even with the changes, he's normally the first one that I'd take out of the list. Like, And especially now that Rocket is immune to damage from collisions, it's like, well, for a 2-threat character, I'd rather have Rocket and Nebula as two threats, just being pains, extra activations, and like I said, pains that have to be dealt with, than running 5-threat of Rocket and Groot to then essentially still do the same. You're just Groot a teeny bit further up the table.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's gonna, again, until we get them on the table and see them, or only reading the cards, it's gonna be difficult to say for sure. I look at Groot, and actually, having revisited him, I wonder whether or not he might even work in something like Criminal Syndicate. You know, being able to heal 3 for 2 power keeps him alive. He has got 7 health. He is 4-2-3, so a bit vulnerable to energy, but he can do some damage. Yeah, you know, putting root on people for 2 power as well is great if you're in a denial style that I like to play. So he might find a place elsewhere, but he's not a standout 3. But then that's what they're going for. They're trying to smooth that bell curve, as we've said. So I think thematically he will work well with Rocket. They've kind of solved those issues. Whether we'll see him as an individual much, I don't think so. But we shall see.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of things to add. If anybody is looking for the revised cards, as and when they get spoiled, they're on the AMG website. That's where the articles are. But if you want them in an easy to find format, MCDB has got the revised cards on. So if you go to mcpdb.com and just type in the search for characters revised, then it gives you all the revised cards so far, which is super useful. They're all in the new format as well. So yeah, go on there, have a look through there, and you can see all the revised ones. And then you pick whoever you want to look at, type their name in, and both will come up. So for example, if you just go in and type Groot in there, it will come up and show you both of those, so you can quickly compare the two if you want to see what the differences are.
Excellent.
Another one just on what we were talking there about how impressed I've been with the way AMG are approaching things. There's been 2 really good interview articles done by Aaron from Web Warrior Protocols website. Go check those out. So one is with Dallas Kemp and one is with one of the Wills. I can never remember which one. But go and check that out as well, because there's some interesting insight, especially the first one with Will, around what their plans are for the cards, etc. Go check out the Web Warrior Protocols website anyway. It's a great little resource, but those were 2 really good interviews, I thought. Again, help show the kind of direction that they want to take the game, which I think is all good.
Perfect.
We do have a listener question.
Oh, okay.
So this comes all the way from Australia. So Peter, who has been a listener from the start, has asked, what constitutes an enemy effect for the purpose of generating power?
Oh, God.
So I'm going to give that to Chalmers to answer, because he didn't know this was coming.
Yeah, I was going to say, you sprung that on me. So what constitutes as an enemy effect to generate power?
Yes. So you only gain power if you take damage from enemy effects. But what is an enemy effect? So I'll give you an easy one here. Is bleed an enemy effect?
No, it's a special condition.
Exactly. I'll save you. Effects.
Fine. I can do it.
Go on. As you quickly type into the rule.
Right, okay. I was going to say, let's see. I've not played in a month, but we will see. So, enemy effects. They are team tactic cards. You can do a little ding as they go off. So enemy team tactic cards that cause damage.
Yes, I don't know every one of them, but I wouldn't go as far to say because it's a team tactics card it automatically does. But yeah, the ones I'm aware of do. Yep.
You've got obviously attacks.
Yes.
Superpowers.
Yes.
I'm trying to think what else there would be. I'm trying to think of what else.
So one that catches people out
Um,
is covered by what you said, but to clarify, so throws. So yes, generally it's a superpower, it comes from attack,
yeah,
but
yeah.
a number of people don't think that a throw is an attack.
All right, yeah. No, it's always
Yeah.
it's like
So
part of the superpower or part of the
yeah.
attack.
So it's classed as an enemy effect.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of. I was going to say any affiliation things, but there isn't any affiliation things that do damage that I can think of off the top of my head. And I think that's it, because crisis cards don't, because they're just the mission. It's not, even though that you pick one, it's not your crisis. It's just it makes what the actual game's going to be. Yeah, I think that's everything, unless I've forgotten one.
No, so basically the two main ones is, as you say, special conditions and crisis. The interesting thing about crisis is where it gets quite confusing, that some crisis will give you power as well. So if you take, for example, cubes is a good one, where you take a damage and you gain a power.
Yes. Yeah.
There was one that I played the other night that I didn't realize gave you it. There's a bit there, but that's specific to the crisis. It has to explicitly say on the crisis card that you gain a power.
Yeah, I was going to say it specifically says on there. So, for example, alien ship, like if you end an activation holding the core and you don't make an attack, you suffer damage, but you don't gain a power.
Yeah. Oh no, Mutant Madmen. That's what we were playing. Mutant Madmen and the traps. So
Yes.
if you're within 2 of a trap that your opponent controls, you take damage, but you also gain power. And I didn't realize that you gained power for it, but you're right. The other one did. So as per the rulebook, I think you're right. So superpowers, attacks, special rules, team tactics, or crisis cards are classed as effects. When a rule references an enemy effect or allied effect, it's referring to any result of an effect of an enemy or allied character. Crisis card effects are neither allied nor enemy. So essentially, crisis cards and special conditions are the two to look out for. There are the odd bit here and there where they explicitly say you don't get power for it. I think I played Rogue against Rogue for the first time the other day, and you don't get power for one of her special ones where she saps a load of power and then does damage, and you don't get power for that. And there was another one I came across the other day, again, where it did automatic damage and you didn't get power for it, which is super powerful. But yeah, in general, you'll get power if it's coming from the enemy, if it's coming from a crisis card or a special condition. That's the word I was looking for. Then you don't get power.
Yeah, and excellent. Like the team tactic cards, I think is the one that captures out a few people as well. Because we had not we, but me and Mr. Spider Foos himself, Lee Foo.
Yep.
He played Sinister Traps and did 4 damage to me, and I was like, "Do I gain 4 power?" And we spent probably about 15 minutes going through the rules forums to finally find a thing about team tactic cards giving you power, because there's not many team tactic cards out there that do damage or do specific things like that, whereabouts you could potentially gain power, but there are a few, and I think there's a few more kind of creeping in now that kind of give you either extra attacks or you can do extra bits. And Sinister Traps I really like that one, but that one, for example, you roll 5 dice, you take a damage for every hit, crit, or a wild, and that will give you power. So
and that's another really good one. So there you go. Rule of thumb at the moment, and I have to say at the moment because who knows what's coming around the corner, is everything but crisis cards and special effects.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. If anybody else has got questions, send them through to us. I'll put the links in the description of how you can contact us, and we'll cover it at the end. But basically, you can get to me on Twitter, and you can get to yourself, Chalmers, on Twitter, at Martin Swaffield for myself, and at Tales of
War Games
for Chalmers. Right, so on to the event. So we had our October. So we're in October 21 for those listening in the far future. Welcome. October bearded card trader event. I had a lower set of numbers this time. We've been gradually building, but unfortunately, due to a number of random occurrences, we had less of the regulars that were going. I know you yourself couldn't make it. There were a couple of others that kind of could do everything else this year, bar the October one. It just seemed to be an unlucky weekend for many.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple of pullouts that couldn't make it nearer the day. So we ended up with 6. I can't even do simple maths. So we ended up with 6. But it was still good to get those games in and get to try it out again. There were a couple of new faces there, which was always good. Going into the event, I was aware that Anthony Poole was going for the first time, and he was bringing She-Hulk with A-Force, and that was the one I was most worried about. But I had no fear because Thomas was bringing a Black Order with All You Got, and he was going to clearly have him round 1, take him out, and everything was going to be fine for me. Thomas failed me, and therefore the rest of this podcast is just going to be me complaining about Tom. And unfortunately decided to start coughing, and did the right thing and took some COVID tests and stayed away. But he failed me, he didn't turn up, and then lo and behold, I got drawn against Anth round 1. So again, all Thomas's fault. But I was running Criminal Syndicate, as I mentioned before, so similar to what I'd run previously with a couple of extra tweaks. I finished Mysterio just in time for the event, so I was able to run him.
Nice.
So we had Kingpin, Omega Red, Black Cat, Mysterio, Taskmaster as my affiliated characters. Then we had Okoye and Toad, so I had 2 threats, so I could go on Sword because there are a couple of people there I know that love Sword. Then Enchantress, who I take every time. Lizard, who is quickly becoming a core favourite of mine. And then I had basically my 10th character was one I could have gone with Crossbones. That's my normal one, but I wanted something a little bit different. So I actually put Wolverine in, and that was my character to play against A-Force because I thought Wolverine into She-Hulk might give me a chance with the healing card and everything.
Yeah.
Then I had Brace, Medpack, all according to plan, Climbing Gear, Grand Illusion, Advanced R&D, Bitter Rivals, and Exceptional Healing. And then we were running Gamma, Mephisk, and Terrigen as my secures, Deadly, Virus, Herbs, and the Research Station as my extracts. I really need to go back and revisit Herbs because I've been running it now for a long time and I never actually pick it.
Right.
With the new changes coming in where you don't get to pick anymore and it's just a random one, I probably need to revisit it and get some games in with it to make sure that I can remember how to play it.
Yeah.
It's one that I put in early, and then because I haven't played with it much, and this happened to me the other night, I actually pulled that and another one which probably wasn't in my favour, but I still had to go with the other one because I was thinking I can't really remember what I'm doing with Herbs. So I really need to get some practice back in with it just to remind myself of the because you've got to get the measurements right to be able to basically hand it off as you can do for Criminal Syndicate. So as I mentioned, I got drawn against Anthony Poole, which we actually walked in to the place at the same time. We were chatting on the way in about the chances are we're going to get drawn against each other. And he was running A-Force, as I mentioned. I think his roster was more or less all A-Force affiliated. I've got a picture somewhere of his actual roster. So he had She-Hulk, Angela, Scarlet Witch, Medusa, Black Cat, Domino, Nebula, Valkyrie, Shuri, and Okoye. So all the ladies. And I can never remember. I think they're all A-Force affiliated. A-Force is the one where I always get a little bit confused because it's all the ones I think it is. There's 1 or 2 that aren't there that I just assume are.
Yeah, I think Enchantress isn't in A-Force, or I'm trying to think. I always had that when I played A-Force.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, these are all in it, and then you're actually looking, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that one isn't, or
yeah. It's just the odd one or two.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, we rolled off, and I think I got priority from memory. I got secures. He got extracts.
It was only 4 days ago or something,
It
was it?
was, wasn't it? I can't remember who got. Anyway, we ended up with Terrigen Clouds and Deadly Legacy.
Okay.
He got priority. Yes, he got priority. He decided to go with secures, gave me extracts. I got Deadly Legacy or herbs. I knew, in fact, I got Deadly Legacy or research. It's all coming back to me now. So I got Deadly Legacy or research, and I didn't want to go down the middle because he, I believe, had Gamma as one of his secures. And I thought Gamma and research with She-Hulk down the middle, not really what I was going for. So I went with Deadly Legacy. I knew that was going to give a higher threat, to give him an option for that, but yeah, it was one of those ones. He actually picked Terrigen Clouds, so he had a choice of 20 or 19, and I believe he went 19. Or he went 20 in the end. So I ended up, even though I put Wolverine in specifically for this matchup, I didn't run him. So I ended up with Kingpin, Omega Red, and Toad, along with Enchantress, Black Cat, and Mysterio. And he was running Angela, She-Hulk, Okoye, Shuri, and Medusa.
Okay.
So I was wider than him, but that tends to happen, especially when you're playing into A-Force. He had priority, so Deadly Legacy was a bit of a gamble, but at the same time, I was still comfortable. I could, with Black Cat and Enchantress, I could go and steal it off them and pass it around for the win. What ended up happening was, I think Angela went in the middle. I forgot that because what I tend to do for Deadly Virus is individual people pick it up and then we pass it around with the Criminal Syndicate ability. I always forget the fact that you need to pay an extra power if you've already got a virus and you want to pick up a second one. So I was expecting Angela to go up the middle, pick up the middle one, and then go either side and pick up the other one. She didn't. She just went up and picked one. And I kind of said to why was that? And he explained, and I was like, oh yeah. So what ended up happening essentially was on the right-hand flank, where we had one of the Terrigen Mists, we had Angela and Medusa for himself, and I had Toad, Kingpin, and Enchantress. And then on the left-hand flank, we had Omega Red, Black Cat, and Mysterio facing off against Koye, Shuri, and She-Hulk. Now, there was a conveniently placed building on the left, which I was quite surprised he went with Shuri on the left, because basically I could get on just next to the building, staying on my objective and not be pushed. So I thought he'd go the other way with her, but it worked out okay for him. Long story short, it was quite even. I got ahead early on, as Criminal Syndicate tends to, especially on something like Terrigen. Relatively key things, Mysterio went mental and basically destroyed Okoye and Shuri. Mysterio into Shuri is brilliant because, one, he's got a mystical attack, so she doesn't get the counting blanks, but also being able to do that and then do trips and traps means that, Shuri doesn't have a lot of health, but what she does have is the amazing ability, no matter who's rolling the dice, to be able to block everything. And she obviously couldn't when it's something for trips and traps where you're not actually blocking it, it's automatic damage.
Yeah.
She-Hulk smashed Omega Red up, and Black Cat basically ended up where she had 2 of the Deadly Legacy viruses and ran away into the corner. So I thought we were okay at that point. It was looking good. And then what happened was I moved Black Cat across the top, so she was in his bottom right corner, so my top left.
Yeah.
She-Hulk was looking menacing at her, as was Shuri. Yes, she had stealth, but she only had 1 health left, so Shuri could basically get within range 3 and just do a gauntlets, and she's gone. So what I did was I ran her across more middle, right at the edge. Now, I had priority. Kingpin basically did 2 Hail to the Kings into Angela. Angela didn't roll particularly well, but I just rolled appallingly, and I left her on 1 health.
Ooh.
Now, I was really annoyed because that should have dazed her, and she had the Deadly Legacy virus on his side, so I thought if it dazed her, I take that, jobs are good, and that was basically it. Because it didn't happen, I got annoyed with myself, and I stupidly got mixed up, and I don't know why, because basically the first one didn't work very well, and then I was thinking about it for the second one, and I had 4 power, and I was like, do I spend 3 power on another Hail to the King, or do I just throw her? Because I could throw a medium, or Hail to the King is throw short. So I said, right, and I paid the power, and I did the Hail to the King, but then I read the rules for these normal headbutt. I didn't get any wilds, and therefore I was like, oh, I can't push you, and you're not stunned. So I was really annoyed. He then moved Angela across. He was able to do I can never remember the name of it, but basically the Rage 4 Angela attack. Dazed Black Cat, and I forgot that you then move after that. So he then got to move after that, which got him within range to pick up the 2 canisters. He had enough power to pick them all up. He got 8 points at that point, and automatically won. So he won 16-13. Now we were 13-8 at that point. I daze Angela. Happy days. I pick up that one. Yes, maybe they get a couple off Black Hole. Either way, we didn't play it out, but we're comfortable. I would have won.
Yeah.
They would needed. Looking at the picture, Medusa would have had to go and basically kill Kingpin and kill Black Cat and pick them all up, which wasn't going to happen. So that was annoying, and I was annoyed that the dice failed me, but dice are dice. However, I stupidly did was I'd forgotten that I'd done one. I read the rules wrong, and I should have just been like, well, it's Hail to the King. I get to throw you anyway. And then it occurred to me later the following day that because it was Hail to the King, she was staggered. So she couldn't have done what she did. Because she moved and then attacked. So, all on me. Whether I said or not to Anth that she was staggered, I think I did, but we all miss things and we all forget things. I should have remembered it. I should have done it. I mixed myself up. I did what I do far too often, is I went into the game saying I've got no answer to She-Hulk, I'm going to lose this game. I dealt with She-Hulk really well. Yes, she killed Omega Red, but that was about all she did. And then I got some bad dice. I got too emotional and basically cost me the game. So that's my fault, but well played to Anth for seeing that move and taking advantage and basically getting rid of Black Cat and stealing the win. That was, at the time I was annoyed because the dice had failed me. And then as I thought about it more, I realised all the mistakes I'd made, which is more frustrating. If the dice fail you, you kind of blame the dice, but yeah, you can always do things differently. I'm always a big believer of dice are dice. You get some, you lose some. But the fact that I forgot to do certain things, that's just on me completely. So
yeah,
that was disappointing, but that was the end of my streak. So up until that point, I had been undefeated in the bearded card trader tournaments, but that was my first defeat, which I'd predicted. We then had lunch, and again, it was, sometimes you kind of look at it and go, oh, well, there was only 6 people. But actually, it was quite nice because we all chatted together as a group. Yeah, a bit more sociable. You didn't have the little split parts. Everybody put their stuff out for the painting nominations, and I have to admit, I think last time there were a few that weren't fully painted, and There were some clear standouts, and I know you won the last one. This time, all of them were top notch. I love
Nice.
seeing the Marvel rosters. They're so colourful and bright, but different ways everybody had painted them. Everybody put theirs out on display. I taken pictures, put them on Twitter. Feel free to go and have a look. But yeah, there were some fantastic looking rosters out there. The winner for Best Painted was Paul with his Convocation roster. Looks fantastic. Lots of the new models in there.
Yeah.
He's obviously painted them up pretty quickly. They haven't been out that long. And given that, they look absolutely fantastic. So well deserved. And then we went into round 2. So round 2, I got Convocation. So I was drawn against Paul. And I'm just looking to see if I've got a record of what we played. Yep, we played Gamma and Struggle for the Cube. So a nice classic, old school. I picked Gamma, he picked Struggle for the Cube. Wasn't really sure. I played Convocation maybe a week before as a bit of a learning game. One of our club players, Stu, is learning the game, and I gave him a game, so I didn't want to pick something like Criminal Syndicate because it can be a bit dull. So I picked Convocation because I wanted to work out what they did. So I had a vague idea, but I didn't use the new Doctor Strange.
Right.
It was a good game. Again, Enchantress and Mysterio kind of kicked off and did quite a bit of damage. He was quite defensive, basically just trying to guard his back Gamma. He didn't come forward that much. His Doctor Strange came forward and did a bit of damage. His brother Voodoo, Dr. Voodoo, Brother Daniel, who I was able to keep at arm's length with Enchantress moving him out, and I think Mysterio may have moved him out as well with his trips and traps, or with his Mystic Gas. So all in all, it went more or less according to plan, and we finished on, I don't think I've got the final score here, 25-12. I'm not a big fan of cubes for Criminal Syndicate because my thing is more about staying alive than it is gaining power.
Yeah.
But I was able to pass them around between the right people to keep them out of trouble. And like I say, Mysterio again was able to do damage into the likes of Koye. And I found actually Mysterio and Enchantress into Convocation are super solid because they're all mystic attacks and they're both Mystic 5.
Yeah, they've got solid mystical defense.
Yeah, and normally people are just, I'll just pay 2 and they're down to 1 for their physical and energy. Well, with this, you don't. I would be quite keen to see a lot of Convocation coming my way because I tend to run Mysterio and Enchantress in most of my lists, so quite happy with that.
Yeah.
So that got me that, and then final game, I ended up playing against JP, so the store owner, who was standing in again, and he was running his X-Force, which he runs all the time.
Yep.
Kind of knew what was going to happen with that. I'd played him in the last few. It was an extremely close game. Because I'd lost the first, I wasn't playing for the win, I kind of took a bit more of a random squad, and I ended up with sticking Wolverine in there. So we played Terrigen Mists, along with, I'm trying to think what the extract was. Oh, it was Hammers, yeah. So it was Hammers and Terrigen Mists. Again, you kind of know you're going to get split out, but oddly enough, this kind of had 3 areas where, well, 2 areas where the fight was. So on the right, I went up with Kingpin and Wolverine. So I put Wolverine in just so we could do Wolverine versus Wolverine for a bit of fun. And I also ran Taskmaster, Mysterio, and Enchantress. And he was running all of the X-Force apart from Domino. So he had Deadpool, Cable, Bob, Wolverine, and Sabretooth.
Mm-hmm.
Kingpin and Wolverine went down the right, Taskmaster went down the left with Enchantress, and then Mysterio was meant to take the home hammer. I didn't realise that Sabretooth could get to my home hammer, but of course he can because he's a long mover. And I used to run X-Men a long time ago, and I ran Sabretooth quite a bit, and he was always absolutely useless for me. So I probably underestimated him a little bit, and he turned out to be really good. I think the extra reroll in X-Force helps him quite a bit. So we ended up, on the right-hand side, he put nobody, so Kingpin just sat there all game, scoring points, taking damage, and moving wherever the mist moved. Wolverine came in for a one-on-one, originally with Sabretooth, but ended up fighting himself. Mysterio got battered by Wolverine and Sabretooth in the middle. Enchantress stole I think she stole a hammer off both Sabretooth and Wolverine and then ran away into the corner. And Taskmaster just got obliterated by Cable, Deadpool. Bob, I don't think he ever got to shoot his rocket. And it was close, and I think at one point, again, we were just having fun. At one point, he moved Cable away from the mist that he was on just to set up for the next turn. He said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't need that." And actually, it finished 15-16. And had he done that, he would have scored 2 points, which would have given the lead. At that point, I probably, because I threw Wolverine with a hammer in when I need to. And I probably wouldn't have done that. So I think I still would have managed to survive just, but it would have made it a lot closer. But even then, it was 16-15, really good fun. JP's a really good laugh. It's great to play against him. And yeah, end of a really good day. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, ended up finishing, I'm going to say third. Yes. So Anth took the overall win, going 3-0. Lee Hamilton was on the top table with Anth for the last game, but finished 2-1. And then Sean, JP 1-2, and then Paul 0-3. So, like I say, another really great day. Thoroughly enjoyed it. No Longshanks drama this time round.
Good.
Which is always good. I'm comfortable with my roster. I've been playing around with Hood, and I think Hood will take quite a lot of reps. So I'm going to try and get as many games in with Hood as I can.
Yeah.
Just so I can really get to grips with what he can and can't do. I'm loving Mysterio at the moment. I've had 1 or 2 bad games with him, but other than that, as long as he gets power early on, he's absolutely fantastic. I still feel like I've got that 10th slot. Where Wolverine was maybe, I know a lot of people don't, but I still rate Crossbones by himself, especially in Criminal Syndicate. He definitely has a place. So maybe he comes back in, or maybe Hood takes that slot. It'll be interesting to see what happens to. I'm looking at my roster. Other than Okoye and Enchantress, I don't imagine any of the others will get a
update.
Yeah, I was going to say a debuff. I think Enchantress probably will. Yeah, I think, she will probably go to once per turn for her move everybody around, which brings it in line with everything else. I still will take her, and she still will be extremely powerful. I just think that she will not be able to do the mad turns that she sometimes does, where she goes in, does 2 beam attacks, gets loads of power, and then just moves 4 people off an objective. And especially in Criminal Syndicate, because I'm counting as 2, I can move all bar 1 off, activate last, move all bar 1 off, and I'm still securing it. So I think she will more than likely get that, but I think less and less games am I having where I end up moving more than 1 anyway. So I'm not too worried. Okoye is probably going to be the biggest change.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with her.
Talking the other night to somebody I was playing on TTS, and I kind of said, to be honest, if they want to make the easiest change, it's probably make her a 3 threat and maybe give her an extra dice on the builder. Say, she is, well, in fact, 4 dice with a reroll, automatic reroll. Yeah, she probably isn't far off a 3 threat. Maybe give her one more health, give her 5 and 5, and make her a 3 threat.
Yeah, would make sense.
I think trying to do anything with her as a 2, I think will need major changes. Maybe she just loses her reroll, but I don't know. So we will see. But I think going forward, the only other one on my roster that's potentially going to move out will be Omega Red. I don't feel like you get the value from him. He's not somebody that he's not a go-to. He's there for Terrigen Mists because of the poison. But even then, I still feel like I don't necessarily get, because I'm generally holding them anyway. My opponent's moving them, so they're not getting poisoned. Yeah, I don't know. We shall see. But on that one.
Fair enough.
So that wraps that up for another episode. Next month we will be down again. So if anybody is interested in joining us, please do. As I say, it's we were growing numbers and we'll be back up again next month. I think you're coming next month, are you not?
November 1, yes, I will be, yeah.
So that will be November the 13th. We are planning to journey south on the Friday to do Friday Night Element with Tony Moore and his gang. So that'll be good to go down there. And I'm also doing which will be the biggest MCP real life event in the world at Element Games for Halloween. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's a 64-person event down at Element Games. So we shall see what comes of that. We'll probably have another episode covering that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll do another one covering our escapades on the Friday night and then the Saturday.
Definitely.
Excellent. So if anybody wants to get hold of you, how can they get hold of you?
At Tales of War Games on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not really posting at the minute, but yeah. If you need me, just shout me on there.
There you go. And I am at Martin Swaffield on both of those. So get in touch if there's any questions you want. Feel free. And until next time, thank you very much.
See you later.